Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Social Housing Roundtable. Lovely to have you all with us this morning. I can see lots of people just diving in now and just registering. So if you are just jumping on, a massive, massive good morning to you on this wet December morning. My name is Matt Baird. I am the founder, host, and chair of the Social Housing Roundtable. We've been running this now for best part of 4 and a bit years. The idea behind it was to create a community from the conversations that matter. And I'm very proud of the work we've done this year. Next week, we will be doing a bit of a wrap up of the year. So I hope you can all join us then. But most importantly, we are here today to discuss a really, really, really important theme. And we've got two fantastic guest speakers who brought the topic today through Repair My Home. And I can't wait to introduce them in just a moment. This whole premise, this whole platform and everything that we're running here, this community is funded for and run by our sponsors. So massive thank you to Repair My Home for today, but also to Alert Call and to CMSG for sponsoring us throughout 2025. And it's also backed up by my recruitment company. So I've been working in social housing recruitment for the last 15 years. If you are looking for recruitment support, please reach out. It does keep this running and available and free for all. So if you're looking for support, we'd love to hear from you. So on to today. This was a conversation that kind of has come about for a little while. We've been trying to get this topic onto the table for a little bit. So I'm delighted that we've been able to kind of get it in the 2025 calendar. There's been a lot of debate. If you've been here for a few of them this year, we are here every single Tuesday if you're new at 11 o'clock. But there's been a lot of discussion this year in terms of community, in terms of customer service, in terms of how do we be large and local? How do we financially make sure that we are running a business with the profits and with the money that's sometimes needed and the wealth that's needed these days to run a housing provider effectively, but whilst giving that local community feel. So I'm delighted that we're joined by Louise, Dawkes and Gregory Robinson, who are going to kind of come on and share their thoughts and engage and share some insight. A little bit of a different one this week. Most weeks they say our speakers are going to speak and then we'll have questions at the end. If you'd like to have questions during the presentation, both Louise and Greg have said please dive in. So feel free to raise hands and we'd love to hear from you as we continue through. If you prefer those questions to go into the chat box, please still feel free to use them and put them in there. And I'll, of course, be reading those out and making sure that those are brought to the conversation. So without further ado, Louise, I'm going to go to yourself first to introduce yourself, and then we'll go to Greg and kick off today's conversation. A massive, massive welcome from the Social Housing Roundtable. It's lovely to have you with us.
Yes, so hi, I'm Louise. I'm the account manager for Repair My Home. I'm quite nervous, and anyone who on this call knows me will know how much I dread public speaking, but here we are. I've been working in the public sector, social housing sector for about 8 years now. My background was originally in property development for 10 years. I used to build and renovate houses. And also then account manager roles in the private rented sector after that. I moved over into the social housing sector during a former position and had to very quickly learn on my feet about how this sector works. I really enjoy working with Repair My Home and Mears with a huge amount of internal networks and support groups, of which I currently chair the Women's Menopause Network. So if I go blank and have a brain fog moment during this presentation, please do be patient with me. So we're just here really today to have an open and honest discussion, to highlight the things that are working well, things that aren't, and discuss some positive changes in how repairs can be delivered. So I shall hand over to Greg to introduce himself.
Thanks very much, Louise. Thanks for the intro, Matt. Happy Christmas, everyone, I guess. It's that time of year. Delighted to be here. Thanks for everyone for joining. A little bit on my background. I guess kind of, am I, or does this qualify me to speak about today's topic? Maybe, maybe not. But my background is always been compliance-related maintenance and projects. I've worked as a frontline operative with a PDA, mainly in my apprenticeship with Yorkshire Water, so I understand sort of that utilities and massive organisation perspective and being a body out there delivering something to somebody. I've been a surveyor / engineer, worked with Kia amongst others. I've also ran a real SME as well, micro SME with 4 employees. So intimately understand the challenges of working with big providers, being a small cog in a very big machine, and the challenges that go along with that. particularly around things like kind of profitability, cash flow, and the commercial elements that can have such an impact on those small organisations. Since then, and more recent history, I've worked for a couple of maintenance providers. One was regional, and we had a network of operatives and some suppliers who provided services across the region of the United Kingdom. More recently, then went into a national provider, was heading up, exactly as it says, kind of a national maintenance and projects solution with an organisation that was primarily based in the FM sector, but a lot of similar challenges. And then for the last 6 months, I've been with Mears, which has been a really interesting journey for me into an organisation much bigger than anything I've really been used to working before since my early days. And that's been a really interesting journey for me. And just to kind of give a minute on Mears, I think a lot of people kind of just see them as a national provider, and they just do R&M projects and contracts, and that's all they deliver. But Mears has got a group structure, and within that we are a registered provider as well. And so we do understand the intricacies around sort of delivering services and making sure we're meeting the requirements of the regulator and ombudsman, etc., and all those compliance elements, and the challenges and requirements on us to engage with everyone who consumes the services at each point throughout that journey. We've got about 6,000 homes in that organisation at the moment. Outside of that, we work for the MOJ, the MOD, alongside a couple of consultancy arms, which are IRT, focused on kind of that journey around EPC suitability to get up to EPCC projects on that basis. And more recently, Pennington's Choices about 3 months ago, who provide us now with capabilities far outside the traditional kind of R&M perspective, which is, I guess, where we've grown up. And my role now is focused on supporting direct labour organisations and organisations that we wouldn't necessarily have worked with before, to utilise the infrastructure within Mears to support these organisations. More recently, and working alongside Louise, we're supporting a couple of charity organisations. So it's quite unique for me to be able to do that with a company the size of Mears in such a small space, but do something really powerful. So quite proud of the work we've done on that basis. And just a side note, we're keen for people to engage. We want to see questions in the chat if at all possible. So anyone who comments in the chat, we're going to do a draw at the end, and there'll be a Christmas hamper or related gift that'll come out to you in the post. So please do drop questions in the chat and engage. I think James has got a hand up.
Yeah, I think I've seen you before actually on Inside Housing and things, webinars in the past, and other ones certainly. I know as far as Mears are concerned, the work they're doing and the things, in terms of looking for cold spots within houses and that, with flyovers, with, looking for various things like that. But my concern is, and I don't know whether you would agree with it or not, John, I have a very real concern about the for-profits coming in now, the likes of JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and that, who are now coming into the sector. And although they've got very, very deep pockets, the question is, considering the new, regulations will be coming in for EPCC as minimum, those regulations obviously after a year will alter. So existing EPCCs will have to be changed to meet those criteria. And the fact is, along with grey and green belts, the investments that are coming in from the private sector affordable homes, as so-called ethical providers and investments, my concern is how will, with so little funding, the actual non-for-profits still continue to meet the social housing model? What will happen to that model eventually with all of this current investment? Another thing would be the budget.
I'm not going to cut you off, buddy. We've got a presentation to do as well. I'm aware time. We'll absolutely.
All right, Matt. Cheers. Sorry.
We'll absolutely come back to that though. Thanks, Jim. Louise, I'll come to you to kick off the presentation because I'm aware we've only got time will fly by. Sorry, Jim. Good to have you back though. Louise, I'll pass to you.
Yeah, that's okay. Don't worry. So hopefully you'll be able to see the screen okay now.
Yeah, I've got that.
So the discussion topic was large or local boosting repair services to deal with demand. So when we were originally looking at setting the scene about what we wanted to achieve on today's webinar and what it means to be part of the sector, we looked at various mission statements and think it's fairly clear that ultimately everybody wants the same outcome. So they want safe, quality homes and communities and to deliver excellent service. So I hope maybe some people on this call will recognise some of these statements. Just for a bit of context, the Repair My Home community interest statement says that we'll enable local housing authorities to enable local businesses to grow and access work streams that they're currently unable to. This will in turn boost jobs, local economy, and will provide support to SMEs in the ways of training, which should hopefully deliver the outcomes of these mission statements on the stream. So we're just looking at how are the repairs delivered in the sector currently. So essentially the main routes are via a DLO, large contractors, and then local or small SMEs. These are the traditional methods, and we've listed some pros and cons here and a bit of an overview about what these models are. Need to be a bit careful because Greg is here from MEARS, who are one of the types of providers. I'm not going to go through all of it as it's very, very wordy, but basically the essential options are one large national contractor that will deliver repairs. This appears to be the easiest route, but it does have risks with getting the main contractor to deliver the service as if they were part of your organisation. Some people also option for the DLO route, so they do get that bespoke approach. This can be tricky commercially though, as you don't get some of the benefits you'll get as a national contractor. And then ultimately, this leads people to go down the recruitment of local to small SMEs, which gives you a bit more agility and a bit more choice. But the vulnerabilities here, I guess, are that the contractors, local contractors, their priorities can change. So you need a bit more of a robust and commercial operating governance internally to combat this approach. I guess really to summarise, there isn't a clear and obvious solution to deliver what we expect from these mission statements. Maybe we'd quite welcome people's 2 pennies on this. Not sure what your thoughts are, Greg, or anybody on the call, you know, your views on the 3 options and what you think is.
Really interesting summary, Louise. I think, you know, these are the 3, the obvious solutions. You know, I've got a view. I think we'll come on to a few themes, but a couple of comments just kind of look like, you know, in-house seems to be preferred. And I guess that's because you've got that feel from, you know, the lead organisation is that, you know, this is how we deliver service, and you're part of our organisation, you know, out there, you know, boots on the ground, and carrying that, you know, that method of operating through, you know, right to the ground, to residents experience that as well.
Emma said she finds it frustrating having non-in-house operatives in my homes. They follow different procedures and values. Helen said at EMH we're moving towards 80% in-house maintenance over a 4-year period and recruiting new apprentices. Jim has said that small SMEs struggling to meet procurement costs and insurance in comparison to national contractors. And Nick's mentioned the DLO means new VAT, so it's more cost effective. You know, from my own side, I think the other part there is actually trying to recruit is sometimes incredibly difficult, though. You can potentially offer more or earn more as a contractor, working for a contractor than for an RP. So that balance itself of where the staff is and how to follow it also needs to factor in. And it's great to see kind of the balance that you've presented there, Louise.
Yeah, we just thought as well why we were here, you know, large or local, is there a perfect solution? We wanted to just perhaps run a quick poll, if that's okay, just to see how people are currently managing their repairs service, or what your preference would be, what you think would be the ideal solution. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a second so I can have a look at this poll results, if you don't mind.
Yeah, they should be coming up on people's screens now. If everyone has got the chance just to quickly fill in those 2 questions, that'd be amazing. The first one was that if you utilise a repair service, how are you currently managing your repairs? And obviously there's on the bottom there saying other, please comment. Obviously, if you're a tenant or if you don't utilise them yourselves, but if you wish to kind of mention how you utilise them if you are a tenant and what your landlord does, that's also great. And then the second question there is, what would be your preference for managing your repairs? Is it an internal DLO, a local contractor, that national contractor, or a hybrid of the above? So I can see we've had just over half the answers through so far. Quite a mixed bag. I think people seem to be leaning a little bit towards kind of internal DLOs or a hybrid model. But as you know, as people are filling in, Mike's just said in the chat there, having just completed our TSM survey, I'm interested in how you embed tenant involvement into service development. Additionally, I have some thoughts on procurement, specifically best fit with supported tenants' needs. Have you any examples of how this can be achieved? John has mentioned that in Barnsley, we have a 60-40 split with the main contractor and a DLO to enable both organisations to learn from each other. More importantly, it was to enable the DLO to move into a customer-focused organisation. And Tim has said there that depending on the numbers of stock, best is a mix of large and local. On stock levels, also having a DLO has advantages. I've also found small housing providers of less than 700 units have dipped into local DLOs or large framework. And as Clark has mentioned, with the DLO, it's easier to install a culture, mainly customer-centric and values to meet customer needs. We've had about 25 people respond out of the 39 so far. I don't know if you want to kind of go through some of the results there, Louise.
Yes, it looks quite interesting. Like you said, there is a very kind of sort of split result here, and it's just interesting to see people's thoughts about, you know, it's the struggle, isn't it? What is the ultimate? What is the best solution? Like I say, I can see that obviously DLO is coming out, you know, quite favourable at the moment. I don't know if there's a specific reason for it or if it's, you know, choice. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think from having run these for a while, I think it's that element of being able to install a culture and it being more customer centric. If you're working for an RP, tends to be the viewpoint, whether it's right or not. You know, Emma said in the chat there, it's a hard one to answer, because if it was a national for all and tenants co-design procedure and expectations, I can see it being better cost-wise to free up more money for support and improvements. Like I said, that I'm building a hybrid platform to boost local economy. I think it's important to use local services for delivery, as large contractors have a profit to make, therefore only have limited operatives to ensure the margins for profit. Using a mix also provides money to flow back into local economy. And as Rebecca said, I'd rather use my social housing provider, utilise an internal repair system. As it stands, there can be a pass the buck culture when the repairs are done badly. I'll end the poll there because I think that's about everyone who's going to answer today, but I'll make sure those results are shared both with yourselves and afterwards. But interesting to see, I think it's, you know, Nick has said there, it's always a mix, RP size, contract management and performance management, plus how things change over time. It's not a one-off decision, but one requires reviews. And Emma said if national then offer better skills training, there's a struggle here in the valleys. So yeah, hopefully you can have a bit of a look at some of those when they come through. But I'll go back to you to carry on sharing your presentation, Louise. Case Management Solution Group, or CMSG, are the home of React, the UK's #1 case management system for ASB and community safety. We are delighted to have them as one of our key sponsors for Social Housing Roundtable 2025 into 2026. And with the ASB app now fully integrated to the platform, it allows residents to record, monitor and report issues directly to their case office in live time. What's not to love? CMSG are bringing simplicity back to case management, and I cannot recommend them enough and thank them for all of their support through this period and through the rest of the year. Thank you, CMSG, and do please go check them out on social media and on LinkedIn. Thank you. Yeah,
so we just wanted to perhaps change tack a little bit here and just look at it from...
Go back to full screen, Louise. It's on the thing, that's all. No, that's absolutely fine. Oh, we're going to have to skip through. That's fine.
There you go. Told you I was nervous.
Oh, you're absolutely fine. No issues.
We're back on track. So we just wanted to change tack a little bit and just talk about the benefits and drawbacks of delivery. We could talk about that all day, but we wanted to perhaps see what your perspective was from the supply chain point of view, because ultimately somebody has to go out there and deliver this. We've got a few examples here of what we thought that, you know, may be some problem areas for some of these contractors working within the sector. we just wanted to look at the flip side of what they experience. We'd love a bit of perspective as well. But, when you're a local contractor or you're a national contractor, you're working on multiple systems. The workloads are very unknown. It can be very reactive. You don't know what's going on internally. Data duplication, and ultimately the one we've got here as well is that people have pointed out is that disconnection from residents. If your labour force is constantly changing and you're not engaging with the residents as well as you could do, be interesting to see what other people's perspective is as a supplier working and supplying into the social housing route. What's been your experience of working with the housing sector?
One of my experiences, Louise, has been with, and it's really interesting, it kind of correlates with some of the comments that are coming through, is that as a contractor, you can be separated from a DLO if you're using that hybrid model, and also from the procuring organisation, what their objectives are. We worked for a firm a few years back now, and 50% of everything that came through was an emergency issue, and that kind of wrung out and put all sorts of pressure on us, and we weren't performing as we were expected to do. And once we drilled into it and understood it a bit more, it wasn't because the assets across their portfolio were in such a poor state. It's because that was the first option, and people logged things online, and the first option was for an emergency call. So reconfigured that, and it dropped to about 12%. So just understanding a little bit around how the client just raises orders and puts them into their solution, however that might be, it can have a massive impact on what the expectation and the strains it put on us was significant, because we're having to send people and drop things for emergencies all the time. You wouldn't get that with a DLO necessarily, because they'd understand that a bit more because they're part of that community already. I think one of the other pieces you've pulled on there is around the multiple system side, especially for smaller contractors. People can be working on double figures of systems which they need to manually push in information into, and there's a lot of duplication there. And again, out in my history, we've had to bring roles in just to provide that admin duplication and take information from systems and put it into another one. I think that's changing now. There's a lot more emphasis on making sure that people can engage and integrate solutions together, so that data input has reduced significantly. The other piece, I think, is understanding you've got asset strategy within there as well. People need to understand if they're delivering for these organisations, are we run to fail? Are we behind on capital investment? Is that going to impact the expectations of the repair service potentially? And then they can tailor that solution to that need. So without that, you're fighting blind a little bit and constantly reacting to ever-changing requirements that can sometimes be played out as kind of poor performance and can impact contract arrangements.
I guess it kind of sort of then leads on to our next question, really, is how do we know that we've got an effective solution? What does good even look like? There's lots of sort of metrics and things and ways of monitoring performance, but at risk of asking a leading question to the audience, as a resident, do you respond to your tenant satisfaction measure surveys? Do you feel your perspective's been listened to by your landlord? We want to know, how do we know if we've got an effective solution? I mean, we had a chat through this and wondered what a more formal model might look like. These are some of the metrics and the things that we're looking at as to how people are performing, and how are people managing their repairs performance and progress. I don't know if you've got any sort of comments as tenants. Do you reply to your tenant satisfaction measures? Do you feel like you're being heard?
Just while we're waiting for a few people to, by all means, raise hands if you wish to, or drop a message in the chat. I'm happy for either way. Yes, Jim, go on, and you can.
Yeah, well, we've had the regulation and everything else. We've had a lot of stock survey stuff done with Savills and everything else. So when it's come down to the TSMs and the perception measures, the perception measurement surveys that have been done, the new software that's been put in place, the 360 and things like that, it's giving you a snapshot as you go along. So you're continually getting a real good feedback. And what I like about it is it's been incorporated to include the partners and other people who have invested interest in it. So they can have a look at it and see if they want to put things in to make sure that jobs are being completed, then that's there too. So looking from our point of view as tourists are concerned, and being on the Landlord Operations Committee as well for the last several years, we actually get an insight into picking the partners, choosing the partners, and when they come up for tender, looking at them and giving our views, which, by the way, are very, very welcomed and not shut down at all. So that's positive of it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Helen, I'll bring you in.
Yeah, our TSMs, we now do them 3 monthly. The whole work's the same as if we was doing a year one, the same same figures, and now we can track 3 monthly if something's going wrong. And as a scrutiny panel chair, we get that data, and if we see them dropping, we ask those questions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Helen. I mean, I can see in the chat there, just before I bring Greg back in. So Clark had said before, I've worked using all these models. DLO has been the most effective in delivering value for money, culture, performance management, reducing complaints and increasing satisfaction. Brian, who's another tenant, has said the main issue is getting repairs done right first time and may require a specialist. Control over the work needs to be a good standard either way, which is not always the case with external contractors, who are sometimes at arm's length from the landlord with soft touch control. Aklak has said over the 20 years I've worked in both environments, I think from a contractor point of view, the multiple systems don't matter as they normally integrate, but I think it's more about knowing what to ask. And Helen said we get 80% of our repairs completed first time with our in-house team. Becky, a major issue with our own landlord repairs provision is that the contractor daily workload is not properly planned as regards to geographical. It's a blatant waste of tenant service charges, as they'll usually attend to a repair. Then only after that repair is signed off will they then be informed of where their next job is. There's no common sense within the planning. And just before I bring Greg back in, there was a point I was going to make. So yeah, Emma said she fills it in as a tenant, but I struggle with the repairs complaints because a lot of the time it's system error or communication rather than the repair operative or work standards. So don't feel organisations are always getting a true picture. Laurel has said as an employee of an RP working in resident involvement, we get lots of feedback via TSMs, transactional surveys, reviewing complaint data and trends, data repeats, repairs jobs. Our DLO appears to be most popular with residents, long service staff that understand the culture and values of the organisation. And Greg, just bringing you in there on that point, I mean, what are your thoughts on some of those points that have been raised, but also, you know, on that question raised by Louise?
I think Emma finished her comment with getting a true picture. So I think, you know, in the slide we threw together, it's just dummy data, we just made it up, but trying to pull out what would be relevant to really understand, you know, what is happening out in the field and what impact we're having as a client organisation and a supplier. You know, things like, you know, payment days, are we monitoring that? Are we making sure that cash flow is not an issue for these suppliers that we're expecting so much of? You know, are we looking at, you know, available funds versus life cycle investment that was promised at the start of a contract? Is that being utilised, or is it falling into, you know, just a responsive contract? You know, the impact around social value of people bringing this to the party as well. I think there's so many metrics that can be reviewed, and you know, I'm sure there's a utopia somewhere where the TSMs fall into that as well, and we can see all these different impacts. But I feel my experience, again, you know, sort of previous, is that we tend to stick to traditional measures, and it's kind of deploying someone, get there on time, fix it or not, and that's where we stop the book. So I think there's an opportunity to develop what we see as performance and create a much more balanced view and weight some of those elements. You know, we need to measure what is relevant and what's important to us, not just things that are traditionally put into a contract and then been repeated year after year after year.
And that very much comes down to that procurement process as well. Louise, just welcome back to you. I'm going to bring in John Townend. John, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Matt. It's just a question that has floated through my mind. Years ago, we used to do gas checks. We used to do about 6 in a local neighbourhood. Nowadays, it seems to be that we're now doing one check in one particular area and then moving perhaps 4 miles, 2 miles to another one, and then another 3 miles. So to drive efficiency, which is what we're trying to do, would it be better if more routine checks are done on a local basis, sort of saying do 8 houses for gas checks in one particular street, rather than doing 8 scattered all over the borough or over the neighbourhood?
It's a good point, John. I think it absolutely makes sense to do it that way, and that's where I think you need a little bit of tension around, the direct labour organisation. Does it have the same commercial requirements, as a private organisation, to make sure that efficiency level is, as tight as it can possibly be? Potentially not. I think people need a really strong understanding as to what is that recovery rate, because there's a cost associated with getting someone to a job. We need to make sure we're as efficient as possible in delivering that service.
I'm going to go to Louise first. Jim, I will come back to you. I'm going to bring Louise because I know we've got a few more slides to go, just to want to make sure we're getting through them today, but I will come back to you, Jim. Louise, can I bring you in?
Yes. Sorry.
All good.
Okay. So this was, opening up a bit of another discussion point. And also, again, a lot of this, I know we keep saying it, but I think feedback is really important. The question is around, so what does the ideal repairs configuration look like? Is it being able to engage with the right supplier in the right location? One of the problems is there's no way of predicting what's going to break, when it breaks, or what impact this has on the organisation. So just asking people to think about, okay, so what do you want to achieve? Is it more of a robust service delivery? Is it less pressure on the DLO that you have? What's more important? Is it resident satisfaction, quality of work, social value, and supporting local companies? What challenges is it out there that you're facing? Is it governments? Is it compliance with new regulations, increased demand on services? Even procurement barriers, again, seems to be one that comes up quite often. And what worries do you have about your current delivery model? Is it reduced efficiency? Is it your ability to be able to deliver, onboarding multiple contractors, procurement issues, skills gap? These are all sort of common problems, and trying to make the right configuration. I mean, I guess from my perspective, I think the ideal is to be as dynamic as possible. Contractor priorities differ, people leave, regulations are always changing. So I think as organisations, you need to be able to utilise multiple avenues without any constraints. How do you truly create a sustainable, dynamic solution? There's lots of different options out there. There's lots of different ways of doing it. How do you know what is right? What is the ideal configuration? To me personally, I think multiple options, and being able to be fluid, things like procurement issues, being able to onboard people, that seems to be a huge barrier into extending people's capacity. I don't know what your experience is and what challenges you're facing, but it would be good to sort of understand, what does your ideal configuration look like to you?
I'm going to go to Jim quickly first before I go to John, because I know Jim had said in the chat there that one major difficulty is getting surveyors and building inspectors now in the sector. The for-profits are becoming very persuasive for executive staff at board level and taking on staff from the sector, trades and admin. I mean, I've highlighted it on the roundtable before. There's no getting away from the fact we have less staff in the sector than we've ever had. And if you are someone who's just qualified with your RICS qualification or qualified surveyor, whatever else, you are going to earn far more money by going and working for a private contractor than you are, unfortunately, working for a local RP, and that balance is difficult. But Jim, I'll come bring you in, then I'm going to go to John. Yeah. But Jim, over to you first.
Yeah, the other thing would be looking at remediation costs, looking at land. Now, if you look at land, when housing associations and things are trying to buy land to build new homes on affordable homes with developers, they're in competition with the for-profits who have never-ending deep pockets, who can barter. They don't seem to have much of an appetite for the brownfield sites, but they are going for grey belts and verge of green belt land. So I think all of these things tie in. And as I've said, and as Matt very kindly just reiterated for me, the fact of the costing in skills and the appetite now to move over. If you look at Inside Housing's magazine and that, you'll see how many executive officers are now being persuaded over towards the private, investment, so-called ethical. But the question is it that ethical? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. And John? John, you're on mute. There we are. Who had it on the bingo card?
You covered what I was going to say. It was about retention of staff and having the required skills that you need to deliver all these services. For some years, it's always been training young people to be on the IT sector. That's where they want to be. I'm just so glad that the government is now focusing on skills shortages and what we need to deliver all these new homes, keep these homes that we've already got well maintained. And for organisations that are doing these work, large organisations like we have this morning, well done to them all for designing apprentice programmes, because we need more of them.
Completely agree. Aclac, I was actually going to raise your point that you've made there in the chat. I said I think it's about sharing with other organisations, which is one thing I think the sector struggles with. So A, that's exactly why the roundtable's here, but B, I couldn't agree more. So thank you for raising your hand. Do come in.
Yeah, I think skills shortage, and again, we've got to speak to each other. So I live in the Northwest, there's 6 organisations that I can think of, but to understand the behaviours of tenant residents and what they need, I think it's important that we need to talk to each other, because at the end of the day, we're social housing organisations providing a service to people. So if something isn't working, or something's working for one organisation, another organisation's not going to know unless we all talk. So I think, Matt, you're right, this forum is here for that, but I think we need to do more of that to be able to rectify some of these issues.
I do think the like you mentioned before, the skills gap is a big one, and certainly part of our mission, if you will, for Repair My Home, are sort of bringing it forward a little bit from where I was going to bring it in, but that is one of our big sort of USPs. We are a CIC, and we are investing heavily in supporting the skills gap and training and helping out for apprenticeship levies. I mean, Mears itself has a huge apprenticeship program, and every year we're bringing on more and more young apprentices to cover that skills gap, one of which my own son, he's 21 and he's currently doing an electrical apprenticeship with Mears, and they've got a huge program. So I think there is lots of gaps, but I think everyone's in agreement and are working towards that push to fill that skills gap, and getting these kids through and getting them trained and encouraging people to come into trades. I think there's a big message out there on apprenticeships and the lack of skills as well out there.
There is, and just while you're loading up your presentation, Louise, I mean, Nick has just said in the chat there, the easiest way to get younger people into work is to lower the retirement age. We have a system where staff are forced to work till they're 67, and whilst I can completely agree with you, the challenge there, Nick, on the other side of it, is that if everybody over 60 was to retire, we'd be in so much trouble right now. We're only keeping just our heads just above water if we are at all, because unfortunately the retirement age is where it is. And Emma said there in the chat, there's nothing more frustrating than a gas engineer coming into service but finding a small issue with a radiator, for instance, and having to go away then report for it to be called. And Aclac has said this is to do with operational process. And I think if that's the underlying thing of all of it, both Louise and Greg, that I think today that operational process coupled with the skill shortage seems to be the two big things. And I know we're going into the last 20 minutes, so I'd love to definitely hear more about Repair My Home and I guess what you're offering as well. But please do continue, Louise. Alert Call return as one of the keynote sponsors for the Social Housing Roundtable in 2025 into 2026, and we're delighted to have them back. Alert Call help as many people as possible feel safe, connected and informed by combining ingenious technology and award-winning human contact. As you can see from this touchscreen I've got with me, Alert Call's digital engagement solution helps social landlords proactively know their customers and properties by putting a portable touchscreen in every home, offering a daily property check through the optional OK Each Day service, plus repairs reporting, tenant surveys, and much more. They also provide Beyond Warden Call, an easier, simpler, and lower cost wireless warden call solution with video door entry, dispersed telecare, and smoke alarms. Alertical work with over 60 housing providers across the UK to enhance two-way engagement between customers and their landlords. In 2022, Alertical won the Queen's Award for Enterprise and Innovation, and in 2023, Alertical won Housing Supplier of the Year. We're delighted to have them back with us throughout the course of this year, and please do go check them out on social media and LinkedIn to find out more. Thank you very much, Alertical, for sponsoring us again.
Yeah, I'd say we're not going to kind of elongate everything, but I guess the main question really is, how do we boost the delivery of repairs? You know, what is the equilibrium? How do we fulfill the mission statements from earlier? You know, can technology create a hybrid approach that delivers scale and positive local impact? Which leads me quite nicely onto just a little bit about Repair My Home. Greg said he was going to just pop in and set the scene onto how Repair My Home started, what, you know, why we came about, and a little bit of history on us, and then I'll focus a little bit on the last couple of minutes just on USPs, really.
Thanks, Louise. Yeah, just a couple of points on that last question. You know, for me, I think getting the blend of the right supplier in the right location, whether that's internal, external, specialist, you know, whatever it might be, and using data to be really dynamic with that's where I've seen it kind of really sing, and being honest with, you know, what an organisation can deliver in terms of its overhead and its structure. But in terms of Repair My Home, so just winding back to MEAs a little bit, we work with a lot of big organisations, and there's a time, probably from around a couple of years ago, or maybe a little bit more recently, we were getting a lot of requests for take on significant backlog works that RPs were struggling with, and it might have been a hangover sort of post-COVID and a few other contributing factors, but we were being asked to kind of resolve thousands and thousands and thousands of tasks, you know, on behalf of organisations that we didn't necessarily engage with at that particular point in time, and we don't have resource kind of on shelves, you know, ready to go and jump in to that scale. We might have been able to support some areas, and I think we did actually. But that drew us towards a solution which, you know, clearly there's demand where people need to engage someone quite quickly for short packages of work and get things resolved. You know, which gave birth to kind of Repair My Home, which is a copy and paste of the MEAs supplier platform, which is an in-house MEAs owned platform. We've got a team of sort of 25 developers that look after all our software. We deliver about 6,000 to 7,000 jobs a day through it, all for our own means. It's not a product that's out there in the market. You know, this is basically a copy and paste. The developer would hate me saying that, of that platform to allow suppliers to engage, you know, with organisations they wouldn't necessarily be able to engage with before, and try and make it as easy as possible. It's back to you, Louise, if you want to give us a quick overview.
Yeah, so as Greg said, you know, we wanted to open up a platform where providers can put on individual jobs or packages of work. So be that they've got seasonal demand, they've got backlog of repairs, and we wanted to try and boost the local economy and boost the work available to local SMEs. So we obviously designed Repair My Home for the benefit that contractors can sign up and they can actually bid for work within the social housing sector. So for the housing providers themselves, there's not a lot of onboarding of lots of different trades and, you know, going through sort of procurement issues. It's utilising Repair My Home as its own individual platform, and we're kind of an intermediary between the client and the contractors themselves. We wanted to make sure we had a good standing, so we would encourage contractors to come on board. So there are no fees for any of our contractors to join the platform. We want to build their businesses, not penalise them for gaining additional work. We simplify the payments process, so we pay the contractors directly. So there's no onboarding of you know, multiple trades for the social housing providers, landlords, public sector workers. We have an affiliation with the SSIP to ensure that all of the contractors that provide work on our platform are valid and they have an up-to-date accreditation. So we do have a direct API link with them. Very cost-effective commercial arrangement. So there's no subscriptions, no monthly fees. It's very much a pay-as-you-go model. So you're not charged for any idle periods. So for the housing providers, you know, you've got these large packages of work, backlogs, you just need some help. You can dip in, dip out, come to us and get your outstanding repairs resolved. There's also data insight and reporting for a full dynamic view on cost, quality and performance. So ultimately, we are an intermediary platform between the public sector and the contractors to get all of those backlogs of repairs, seasonal works, and just be there as a supporting arm for people with DLOs or who currently have a very, very small pool of contractors that they use. I think for me personally, our main USP, which is one that I'm quite passionate about, is that we are a CIC. So any surplus profits we make, up to 65% of that goes back into local communities. So we're helping SMEs with things exactly like apprenticeship support and training. One of the things that MEARS do really, really well, which we don't shout about enough, is our social value contribution. As a company, we spend an awful lot of volunteering hours, money on time, on projects across the country. This is the part where I love working for MEARS Repair My Home. I've been involved in quite a few projects. I've been involved in the regeneration of a nursery, so planting, painting, building tracks, new fences in a nursery in Milton Keynes. That was really good. Couple of days. I've worked with the Willen Hospice, sorting through all their donations and things for their shop. And we've recently embarked for Repair My Home on a project with a couple of the MEARS branches and obviously Repair My Home ourselves. We're working on a refurb of a head office for a charity called the Angels Foundation. So the foundation themselves support people who have fled domestic abuse. So be that with counselling, support services or new furniture. A lot of the people that flee and need help have absolutely nothing but an overnight bag or the clothes that, the clothes that they have on their back. It's a really, really worthy cause. So we are going to be working with our local pools of contractors and a couple of branches of MEARS across Cambridgeshire to refurb their head office and build therapy rooms and support counselling rooms so they can actually double the amount of therapy that they have on offer and help double the amount of victims. We're basically going to be creating safe spaces for, soft furnishings, therapy rooms, a children's play area where children can help be counselled and recover through things like messy play and toy therapy, which is really beneficial. So we're kind of working on creating a very warm and welcoming space so they can double their capacity. So personally, I can't wait to get started on that in the new year. So I guess my kind of parting question really is around sort of the social value, for us as a CIC and for being backed by a big organisation like MEARS. You can see here just a few facts. We've had 10,000 plus weeks of apprenticeships have been supported. We've created nearly 3,000 local jobs, 120 million in social value and 32,000 hours volunteered in local projects that benefit communities. So I think we do a really, really good job of fitting that social value element. So I guess really just to end the presentation it's the question for us really is, does this type of model, a compliant technology enabled system with a clear social value focus, clear social value ethics represent the future of non-emergency repairs delivery? So allowing your landlords to access local contractors without sacrificing compliance or efficiency really. thanks ever so much for your input and everything so far. But we'd welcome your thoughts and your comments about what we're actually doing here.
Thank you, Louise. Just before I come to both Jim and John, there was a question from Michael around kind of geographical spread and capacity and that being uniform across the country. What challenges have come up in those spaces and how are you combating those?
So we've got national coverage. So we've kind of recruited a lot of contractors. It could be glaziers, plumbers, electricians. So we do have the national footprint. So we've gone to a lot of local companies, and because we ask them to have SSIP, so we know they're accredited, so we know that they do a good job. They've gone through all the health and safety vetting and practices. We've got a lot of contractors that have joined because of the factor that they don't have to be onboarded for multiple organisations. So we're supporting them in terms of getting paid and getting work within their local communities. So our coverage is actually quite good. I've just seen the comment from Tim, and yes, it is a similar model, very much so, but without a lot of the hefty price tags. And I've said our main USP, I think, is the CIC element. We really want to support local businesses and help them grow. The industry is hard. There's a lot of hoops and hurdles.
You put it on the head there, Louise. The initial challenge to sort of me is, and this is the response, and it is, it's focused on supporting communities and enabling contractors to get engaged with us. So if they on board with, just with Repair My Home, they can touch hundreds of clients potentially. And similarly, clients don't have to onboard hundreds of different contractors at a local level, which is an admin burden. And then they've got to pay everyone and everything that goes along with that. It's kind of one payment, one disbursement, all that risk is taken away. And it's far easier for people to engage with.
Thank you both. Jim, I'll come to you and then I've got John. We've got about 2-3 minutes left before we go to final thoughts.
Right. Very quickly, for CIC, that is community investment companies, isn't it?
Community interest company, yeah.
Interest companies, yeah. I come across them a lot through the foundation that I'm on, the Soros Foundation, looking at grants and things. You come up a lot. I have found a lot of the CICs now are actually spreading over and almost working on a franchise basis in many cases. So I think that's something we have to be aware of with the community interest companies like that. To get back to what you're saying, as far as you're concerned, tourists are actually the foundation are offering a course here and offering many of them for training, which is at the moment in energy efficiency, and that will be at level 3. So they're offering that to anybody who wants to take it. They don't have to be a tourist tenant, and they're willing to fund for that. So they are doing a lot of apprenticeships and work within our foundation and within Taurus to bring people along into apprenticeships that way. Regarding MEAs, again, so many webinars that go on now where the input that you give is so great and so valuable. I have to say, speaking from, as I say, CIH and Inside Housing and that, I think it's really good. But again, with the geography of planning of land now, with the information AI dash and things like that, you can actually look at your land, can't you? And look at the parcels of land and work things out on costs and that, so you don't have the same difficulties with planning law. Is that correct?
In terms of new build?
And so the new build, if you're looking for land to look at before you buy it, remediation, habitat of social, the value credits for biodiversity and things like that.
A lot of this on
actually equator.
But yeah, go on, Greg.
No, it's not my area of expertise, but we generally we're not new build. That's not us. We do a lot in sort of retrofit, SHDF form homes, but not in the new build space. But we have partnered with people to support funding, over extended contract periods.
Thanks, Jim. I'm going to go to John. Thank you, Jim. John, over to you.
Thank you, Matt. Social value. It's a hard thing to measure. There is some innovative work being done now in Germany, Japan, and one thing another, other areas of the world regarding those who are homeless and are sleeping on the streets. It's something that we in the social housing sector don't always look at with the responsibility that we should do. There are some unfortunate people, and it would be nice if we could just share a little bit more of our social value with those who are sleeping on the streets. For instance, these individual pods to enable them to sleep under cover in a warm environment over these next few months. It's too early for this year, but it's something to look at for the future, please.
Yeah, I know we've recently had Mears do a lot of winter warmer packs that they go out and hand out to people, you know, food packs and coats and blankets and gloves and scarves. We have as part of their sort of social value, they do winter warmer handout packs and things like that as well. But it's interesting, you know, to get that view.
Thank you very, very much. I'm just going to the last few points in the chat. So Emma had said, had a couple of questions which have kind of been answered a little bit in the chat. One was around how do you manage the different procedures that tenants expect as part of their contract with the landlord? Do you include that in the job? And Greg had said it's a part of onboarding for suppliers with bespoke requirements for attendance captured and communicated. And Emma's justifiably said that I'd love to see a working group of tenants and operatives from across the sector to design a value for all that isn't just financially focused. And there was something else previously asked around kind of AI in repairs systems. And Greg said there's an opportunity to increase efficiency, but that balance with tenants and that trust with tenants is still absolutely being worked on. We answered Tim's question, though Michael had said that before he's had a contractor arrive by bus and needed a lift a screw fix before. I think that probably says it all. Andy's really impressed by the CIC and apprenticeship elements, and Barbara works for an RP and said it definitely sounds of use. Jim has mentioned Housing Association, Charitable Trust, social values, credit back, the NHS use it well, which is good. And Emma said, I think it's a wonderfully designed system. We'd love to see more tenant involvement in the building and growth of it. Louise, Greg, last couple of minutes, I'll go to yourself for final thoughts and what you'd like to leave the audience with today.
I guess really for myself, just sort of touching on those elements. You know, we are here to support. We know there isn't a one size fits all. Different organisations work different ways, but ultimately, I think that the main message from Repair My Home is that we are here to support. So we don't have, you know, large fee structures. That's kind of not what we're about. We're here for backup and support as and when you need it. And the fee structure obviously represents that. So, you know, we want to try and boost local economies, not penalise people for, you know, for doing extra work. So, but we're happy for people, if they want to reach out, like, you know, drop us an email, contact me on LinkedIn. You know, happy to chat.
I'll make sure those details are shared because to me this is an excellent service. But Greg, any final words from you?
Yeah, just thank everyone for engaging. Some really interesting thoughts in the chat, and clearly this is close to a lot of people's hearts. I think for me the biggest piece is making sure that there's trust throughout the relationships and making sure that people are informed. And I think from you know, if you work in the industry, it's about being inquisitive and looking and seeing what's out there. You know, there's a lot of new products coming to market, and one of them might be the right solution. So it's definitely worth spending the time to engage and understand them in a bit more detail. The final one would be have a very Merry Christmas, everybody.
Well, quite. I think it's look, to everyone who's engaged in today and to join today, huge thank you, massive thank you to Repair My Home for bringing it to the platform today. This is our penultimate, I guess it's really our last proper roundtable of the year, because next week is very much a wrap up of the year and what we've learned and some of our insights. So a huge thank you to Greg and to Louise for bringing the topic for today. If you can't join us next week, have a wonderful Christmas break, which however you're celebrating it, and a fantastic new year. But for now, please, as I say, do reach out to Repair My Home with further questions. I can see a couple of people in the chat already saying, I've asked my landlord, why aren't we using it? And that's, you know, we're trying, as always on the roundtable, trying to advocate for voices that, you know, not every time, not every speaker we kind of absolutely back and kind of go, this is something we believe in. We're just trying to bring a conversation to the table. But I think with Repair My Home, there's something quite special there, and I'd love to see it kind of integrated a bit more nationally, hopefully over the course of 2026 and beyond. But for now, Louise, Greg, Louise, I know you were nervous today. You did brilliantly. I just want to give all the assurance there. A massive thank you to you both. And for now, from the roundtable, for all of those who joined us this year, thank you very much and have a lovely Christmas if we don't see you next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks all.
Thank you, everybody.